Welcome back to Morning Trade Live. Even though it's a holiday shortened week, we got the end of the year. We've already had some volatility and a lot of names that have been going wild, so you got to pay attention. It is not an option. Mr. Jon Najarian joins me here this morning. Co-owner, great to see you, John.
Thank you.
Co-owner of Market Rebellion, co-author of It's Not an Option.
That's right.
How are you spending your last couple of weeks of trading here? What should we be keyed into?
Well, at the end of the year, you always get tax loss selling. I know most of your audience knows what that is, but real quickly it is you're going to sell a stock that has not done well for you. So whether you had shorted a stock and it went up in your face, or whether you bought a stock and it came down, in either case, you can close that out and recognize that loss, post it up against the gains that you've got in your portfolio. So it's just good tax planning. However, there's this wash sale rule that kind of gets tricky, which is you need to let that thing basically, you can't re-enter that trade, whichever side it was, for 30 days. Otherwise, the government, the tax man, the IRS will say, nope, you can't recognize the loss.
You're still on the hook.
But I think it's important, Oliver, to see that many people do sell, great example, I think, Supermicro computer.
Okay.
Stock was on fire. Yep. Everybody's buying it. Elon Musk, he's buying that, and Dell, and he said that publicly, that he was buying those because you need that for your data centers. That's what Supermicro really helps build out. Well, the stock fell apart on that Hindenburg report. And then, they had issues with trying to find a new auditor and all that stuff. So anybody that was in it at 80 or 70 or 60 or 50,
got smoked.
Yeah, got smoked all the way down to 17. Many of those people have been selling over the last couple weeks to recognize that loss. But now the dirty little secret is, of course, they can't get in for 30 days. So the longer they wait until the end of the year, it means they can't get back in until January or whatever. And by then, it may have hockey sticked again, in my opinion. So I've been aggressively buying some of these stocks that I think have just been, we use the phrase baby thrown out with the bathwater.
Sure.
We use that a lot, even though it's not a very pretty visual.
Things that were negative in the tech world for a moment in time on the year stand out, right? And Supermicro, for such a big unwind, the fact that late last month that was down on the year is like it's got to be one of the stories of the year.
It does. It has to be. And as it turns out, Hindenburg was right. They were being aggressive with the recognition of some of their revenue and so forth. But an independent survey, as well as the new auditor, hasn't found any wrongdoing. So did the stock deserve to be down from 84 to 17 bucks? Probably not. Okay. But nonetheless, you and I know uncertainty breeds contempt in the stock market, and that certainly was uncertain.
Fair enough. And it seems like, give them the benefit of the doubt until, we've seen something more. I think that when the auditor backed out, it was like, a huge red flag. But to your point, some of the second looks have said, all right, there's nothing, there might have been smoke, but there's no burning fire here. So combined with the kind of late into year selling, I can get behind it. The other thing, too, is that I think that for people trying to decide where to put their money in tech, there were things like Broadcom that went huge on earnings. That kind of presented these sort of like fresh ways to get into that trade. What about on the flip side, if we talk about some of those winners?
Sure. Well, and Broadcom is exactly that. You nailed it. They all of a sudden, people started believing Broadcom, Marvell, Micron.
Yeah, Marvell's a good one,
Yeah, the other stories of the AI. Because artificial intelligence isn't just here and gone. It's going to keep building out for years, and those guys are going to participate. It's not going to be a one winner takes all situation. I mean, even the iPhone has competitors.
Totally.
So I would say, Broadcom, AVGO, that is one of the ones that I would definitely keep a sharp eye on. But Micron and Marvell also, and then to the lesser extent, Dell and Supermicro, because there are so many different ways to play the AI revolution, and some of them are hardware, some of them are software. I work with a lot of private companies right now that are going to be going public that people will say, where did this thing come from? Like a company that sends packets of information rather than just a steady stream means that they can take up less electricity, less demand on that data center. And, there are companies like that are private, like I say, like Atom Beam, that I love, but there's no real way for the, home audience to play those yet because they're not public.
Well, we might have some of that coming next year, right?
Yeah, I
it's
think
supposed to be pretty juicy for IPOs.
Yep. That's what everybody's saying, and I think they're right. Between M&A, mergers and acquisitions, and some of these companies coming public, I think it's going to be a great year for these financial companies like JP Morgan, like Matrix, like Goldman Sachs, Bank of America, Merrill. All of these are going to benefit. The big guys will benefit the most, probably.
Totally. Your approach to trading Supermicro versus Broadcom, tell me how that differs. One that's on the lows, one that's on the highs. I imagine there's some difference in approach for if you want to be long both. What do those trades look like? How do you structure them differently?
In those two, I'd say I'm much more comfortable being long Broadcom stock or an in-the-money call, using it as a surrogate for stock, and selling upside calls against it. Just, milking that revenue from those calls that I'm selling. But in the case of Supermicro, because of this very high volatility there, I'm just doing call spreads. I think Friday I put on the 32.40 spread or something like that, so it's 8 points wide, and I have all the upside for 8 points. But the trade-off is that I only have a little bit of downside, and I like that. I mean, do I want to swing for the fences and buy those 32s naked and just say, I hope it just runs back to 50, which would be great?
No, hope's not a strategy.
Great, but I don't like having to hit home runs. I like hitting singles and doubles, and I think putting on a call spread is the way to do it.
Like that. Okay, I like those details. What about for some of the speculative, more kind of like high beta volatile stuff? I was looking at you tweet at me before coming on here. I got to stop saying tweets, but X. When it comes to like the quantum stuff and all of the I put them in that more kind of speculative camp, and then some of the AI, because just from the technology perspective, there's a lot still that has to fall into place before application. I mean, some of these they're making sort of alternative to silicon chips right now, but you also look at a lot of these companies, and some are pre-revenue or they're very early revenue. How do you manage those positions?
I think anytime we said at the top of the show, uncertainty breeds contempt. It also means there's opportunity.
Sure.
So how do I address that? As you might imagine, Oliver, because you and I just talk about it all the time. I like to address that by defining my risk on entry by buying calls. So I have bought a lot of call spreads in QUBT, QBTS. These are both quantum sort of plays, if you will.
They've gone ballistic.
Yeah. I mean, it's not uncommon in the last 2 weeks to see them up 20, 25%, even 30% one day, and then 2 days later down 17%. So those are the kinds of back and forth that scare investors, especially if you're buying the stock, because what if you were late to the party getting in when it was going up 35%, next day it's down 17, and then it's right back up to 20. You're probably selling the bottom and buying the top a lot.
Right, you get caught getting whipped back and forth.
Yep, I would buy a 2 or 3 month out option and know that I've defined my risk by doing that. And then on big rallies, sell upside calls against it.
Okay.
And when it pulls back, maybe buy those calls back, the ones that I've sold, and just keep doing that, rinse and repeat, as they say, over and over again, because that's going to be a volatile sector, probably as volatile as any other than maybe an FDA approval of a cancer drug or an AIDS drug or whatever it might be.
A really good point on that last part there is that this is a unique brand, I think, a breed of volatility that we're seeing for these, because we've gone through a few of these in the overlook. I mean, some of them seem like they could be really incredible. And here in Chicago, we're building a big quantum center. The tech is going to get there at some point. But as far as early stage, this stuff seems way earlier stage than anything we've seen from the AI that's actually generating big sales. I mean, this is on the other end of the spectrum.
Right. I mean, if NVIDIA is selling chips for $55,000 a chip,
right.
Obviously that's pretty significant revenue. On the other hand, if a quantum computing startup, even if they've been around for 5 or 6 years, they're just public for a couple, people are not as willing to say, I think these guys are going to be a multi-billion-dollar revenue producer next year. They might have to look even further down the road, and the further you look down the road, they're saying, well, they're going to make money, but the question is when,
right.
and how much, And is it going to be flooded? Like the market is kind of flooding right now with everybody putting AI. SoundHound is AI.
Oh, yeah.
And SOUN, it's like, okay, they're music. I get it.
Yeah.
But they're also anything to do with voice or sound.
Right.
So if indeed you're somebody that's saying SoundHound is going to be this multi-billion-dollar behemoth, which obviously many of us believe that, it's not going to just be about music. It's going to be about any kind of sound going forward, not just Christmas songs.
Wow, I didn't even realize it had gotten to $21.
Look at that graph.
It's funny because earlier this year, I actually found their when they first started rallying, we talked about it because they do have an amazing voice and music recognition. Obviously, their tech is I thought really impressive. But then it's at $20. I was like impressed when it was at 10. Mm-hmm. It's pretty incredible. So your point is on that stuff, you sell the calls when it starts to rally against your position that you've got in for a couple months, basically.
Yeah, I'm picking 2-month out calls, and then I'm repeating over and over again, selling upside calls against the calls, in other words, a higher strike, and then buying them back as the thing pulls back, because they all pull back. Nothing goes straight up, even though that graph looked like it went straight up. I guarantee there were some back and filling moves over the past few months.
Great stuff. John, great to catch up.
Likewise. Thank you very much, Oliver.
Fun to talk some names as always. Jon Najarian, co-owner of Market Rebellion, co-author of It's Not an Option.